At the end of the webinar, we'll have a question answer round. You are welcome, most welcome, to ask your questions, and in whatever limited capacity that I have, I would try to give a solution or a remark or an answer to your query, and we'll take it forward from there. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining today, and let's I think start the webinar as of now. The agenda or the theme on which the webinar is going to be pushed forward is promotion of livelihood through affirmative action and corporate social responsibility. At the onset, I would like to talk for a minute on the establishment of the agenda. We wanted to start the series of webinars with specifically looking at livelihood as not only a source of income generation as it is commonly understood, but as a source to bring about a pragmatic change in the overall social development index. The mistake that usually we do is that livelihood is always attached with the fact of income generation, prosperity in financial terms. It is a very important part of the component, but it is not the whole story itself, because it is directly or indirectly related to education, health, and nothing less but the environment at large. And the tools that we are going to talk about today about corporate social responsibility and affirmative action are like twins. You cannot have an affirmative action policy from corporations without declaring themselves being socially responsible, and the vice versa. So ladies and gentlemen, this was thought about, and we have established a series of webinars, first of which we are going to start now with promotion of livelihood through affirmative action and corporate social responsibility. As Mr. Sapru has just introduced me, I am Mr. Chakraborty, Chief Executive Officer of Fiinovation, which is Innovative Financial Advisors. We are basically a research organization which works on prospective research on education, livelihood, environment, and we have been surviving this quite a concentric place post-mandate for the last 7 to 8 years. Well, we assess businesses in doing their assessment reporting audits, and I won't deliberate it on further. And we basically guide and mentor organizations and corporations to go about their sustainability, affirmative action, and social responsibility agenda. Well, the agenda of the webinar. This is officially the beginning of the subject matter of the webinar. The agenda of the webinar has been distributed under the following 6 highlights. First, we'll be understanding the alignment between corporate social responsibility and affirmative action. Then we'll explore the livelihood opportunities for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe youth, highlighting the role of corporations in corporate social responsibility and affirmative action. We'll try and deliberate and understand how livelihood initiatives can be linked with affirmative action and corporate social responsibility. We'll have some insights on affirmative action initiatives as well as corporate social responsibility initiatives facilitated by the chambers, by the industry at large, which has targeted specifically livelihood generation for the marginalized communities. And then we'll have an update on the new policies proposed as per the Union Budget 2016. Now, affirmative action. In simplest terms, we have tried to keep the terminology as simple as possible, because that is what we feel is the requirement of the hour. Our whole institution works on simplifying aspects, so we have not used complicated terms in order to force you to go to dictionary and to go to Google and search what the word means. We have tried and used basic language to make everyone understand about what our perspective is. So affirmative action. I know most of you will be aware of this, but I would still make an effort to actually start with the bottom line. So affirmative action is reverse discrimination and positive action. It promotes inclusive development, equality on all aspects. So you cannot leave a component or a part of the society aloof and be only concentrating on GDP, and you cannot leave 40 to 50% of our brothers and sisters away from the development index and call ourselves developed by looking into the financial figures at large. We're going to focus on upliftment of the historically marginalized. So, there's a great debate going on in the country right now whether the reservation or whether the affirmative action should only deal with economic sections. But if you delve into the history, which we have actually previously in the previous webinars, you will realize that it is far too early for us to comment on it, because a great part of our society has been historically marginalized, and we cannot ignore the fact that these parts of the society, these people of the society, our own people of the society, cannot be brought on the line and expected to run the race with the same intensity after the upper communities have enjoyed the kind of facilitations in the last few decades. Important policy tool for holistic development in many countries, including the developed ones. So, it's a misnomer that because we are a developing country, we try to look at reservations or we try to look at affirmative action. In fact, developed countries have actually adhered to a lot of these issues, but the discrimination may not be on caste and creed, but it was on color. And there are various other ramifications. And one more thing is that we are not actually only talking about affirmative action for people belonging to a separate caste or a creed. We are also looking he has shown an example by making it sure that it works on the ground even for productive purposes. Now, because we are basically going to concentrate on the industry at large through the chambers, we're going to focus on basically India Inc. If I can take that leverage and call India Inc. So what is the relation between affirmative action and India Inc.? Just a brief snapshot of where it started. In 2006, the then Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh actually appealed to the India Inc. to incorporate affirmative action policies to diversify workforce. Now, a lot of companies actually landed up taking that vow, and they have incorporated a lot of policy favorable mechanism for implementing affirmative action, whether it was vendor understanding, whether it was supplier management, workforce engagement, which I'll come to it one by one at a later stage. But it started in 2000. It started actually long back, but in 2006 it got an impetus from the then Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh's government. The Department of Public Enterprises guidelines on CSR and human resource for central public sector enterprises came into effect it was released on 2010, and then the non-voluntary guidelines were established by the MCA in 2011, which was later adopted by the Securities Exchange Board of India. Specifically speaking about the chambers, they have been promoting affirmative action through skill training, scholarship, employment opportunities, education from day one of their existence. A brief understanding about corporate social responsibility, because we'll now shift our gears to understanding what is affirmative action, how does it align to corporate social responsibility. It is basically a strategic business management concept to obtain a balance of economical, environmental, and social imperatives. You can call it by a number of ways. You can call it the triple bottom line. It's the triple P, the 5S. Some terminology people will keep using, but the bottom line is that the businesses will have to take the responsibility of mitigating or at least advancing the effects that it's causing to the environment, both the ecological environment, the economical environment, and the other social environment. Well, this is not an Indian concept. We have adopted this concept from the West, as like many other concepts, but this one was for the good. In North America, it's called corporate citizenship. In Europe, it is known as corporate responsibility. I will not delve into why are they called corporate citizenship and responsibility, because we have discussed this in the earlier webinars, but I'll just give you a brief snapshot. The citizenship concept comes because when industry starts believing that it is not something else other than the society, and it is a part of the citizen management system that works. So every company takes its pride in declaring itself as a corporate citizen, a responsible citizen. In Europe, it is a bit different because the corporates actually tend to believe that social responsibility is not something that comes non-aligned with corporations. It is a part of the corporate behavior. Therefore, for example, your responsible behavior with the supply chain is as important as giving money after you earn the profits in India. So, therefore, the coining of the word corporate responsibility is in Europe, but in India, because we have to enforce, and therefore the industry was at a very early stage, so we coined the term corporate social responsibility. Okay, now a brief snapshot of CSR in India. The pre-independence era, you all know, started with religious and charitable philanthropy. Now, the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, urged to pool resources, and this was a request which was made to the industry at large. And I remember that there was conference going on where Mahatma Gandhi was requested to say a few words, and he made that great speech in which he ended by talking to the industry leaders and telling them that leaders of tomorrow will not be known by the richness they have in their bank accounts, but they will be known by the capacity to get the communities, and especially the backward communities, along with themselves. You know, this trusteeship, that faith mechanism that started working in India from that time has carried on. We have not seen a great impetus to this sector till about 2000, and post 2000 I think we have really started looking at it, because as the effects of liberalization started setting in, the argument started about how much can we ignore the societal and the environmental fabric in which the industry operates, and should we not be forced to take responsibility of the environment in which we operate, the damage that we are causing to it, the depletion of the resources that we are causing to it, and isn't this going to hinder the probability of a sane, balanced ecosystem for our future generations to come. Looking into it, in 2013, the Companies Act quantified it and made it mandatory for companies which fall under the CSR ambit. We have discussed in detail about CSR ambit in the other webinars, so I won't delve into it much. But now it has become a mandate. So, you know, the question is, if we have to do it and if we fall in the ambit, why don't we do it in a proper way? Okay, let's start with the mainstreaming of the subject. It is livelihood. Now, I would just like to set the definition. I've already had a discourse for about a minute on livelihood. It means supporting one's existence, especially financially or vocationally. You know, livelihood is a set of activities involving securing food, water, fodder, medicine, shelter, clothing, and so you can read through the definition. But what it primarily means is that livelihood cannot be only income generation. It has to be maintained. It has to be understood in a way that livelihood has got great ramifications. In fact, it has got far-reaching and sustainable, long-standing ramifications as far as health system is concerned. Your capacity of income will also define the level of healthcare and the education that your family accesses, and this is how it, you know, it transcends from just being human to material as well. The only question is, and why we are talking about affirmative action today, is because we have a part of the society which has not had the equal share to leverage the opportunities that are available, and to influence policies in a way that the situations are made favorable to ensure the livelihood opportunities are an equilibrium of livelihood opportunities being given to them, but with absolute non-compromised dignity. Livelihood helps in tapping new opportunities. Livelihood has a direct links with the environment and global warming, as we have discussed earlier. Now, how do we look at livelihood in India? So let's look at some of the data and the mechanisms in how we understand livelihood in India. So the work participation rate as per census 2011 was 39.79%. You can look at this, and I'll come to the figure of the employment requirement or the job requirement that India will have in another 5 years. You will understand that this gap, if not shortened, will widen up so much that the disparity, I'm sure, will land up causing social disharmony. I'll come to that at a later stage. Majority of the rural dependent on agriculture and allied sectors of livelihood. Majority in urban areas are engaged in service and manufacturing sectors. We are going to come and discuss, I think, about a few slides later on the aspect of migration and how it is taking shape. Also with respect to climate change, because how climate change is enforcing, the farmers to get out of it, get out of farming community, how the next generation of the farmers are not interested in doing it, and it is not hidden from anyone as to the plight of the farmers that is currently prevalent in the country. 12 million people enter India's workforce every year. Now, please realize that we create a lot of jobs. There is no doubt about it. But with the overall economic slowdown, we also land up losing a lot of jobs. And I'd be interested to see later in the presentation if the ratio of people entering into the workforce and the ratio of people actually exiting the workforce is worked out, because that will give us a clear picture as to what and where are we how are we exactly placed as of now. Are the youngest country in the world, not in the number of years that we have enjoyed our independence, but we have the largest young population in the world. The fact of understanding is that what is the quality? What is the quality of this youth that is coming out? Whether they are employable, whether they are skilled, what kind of skills, is the skill aligned to the industry that we are actually working on? For that, the first important primary factor is we need to create jobs and employment for the youth. We need to reduce the vulnerability of the marginalized sections. We'll come in detail with it, but yes, we have to understand that as we promote livelihood, as the graph of the income and the optimal usage of resources comes up for the marginalized sections, there is naturally going to be a reduced vulnerability on these sections. Increased purchasing power parity. So your pocket and my pocket are the same strength. We have the same purchasing power, and if we realize in Indian societal system, your purchasing power also defines your social standing to a certain extent. Optimal usage of resources, maximize scale. I'll come to the scaling part when I talk of some initiatives of the industry at large. Stable livelihood substantially increases income, asset ownership, self-esteem. I've discussed about it. It has a cross-linkage with health, education, and environment. Very clearly elaborated in a few slides later, but we have to understand that livelihood does not exist in isolation by itself. It exists in cross-linkage with health, education, and environment. If I can actually simplify this concept, I may say that you take the graph of livelihood for one family up, and you see the positive trend and the effects on the system of health, education, and environment monitoring for that family. I think especially health and education, and I think that leads to a lot of positive ramifications for generations of that specific family to come. Now, naturally, because it is a great opportunity, it is also a great challenge. A lot of challenges do exist for the livelihood, as far as livelihood is concerned. Some of these are generic in nature. It does not only encompass the challenges for marginalized communities of the country, but it also is a challenge for a rural youth who's not empowered enough to galvanize the resources that are available. Sometimes the cause is awareness. You know, your eyes don't see what your mind does not know. So if I'm not aware of my rights or the privileges that I enjoy, chances are I won't be able to take advantage of those resources in my life. So what are the challenges like? So lack of education and skills among the working class. I've discussed, you know, there's a great debate going on that you need to start moving into skilled employment. The current government of India has got a great impetus on skills. In fact, there's a ministry established on this. And I hope and I sincerely believe that the kind of push that the government is giving for skilling, it leads to a lot of positive change. It should not only be limited to just getting people skilled on a specific trade, but also post-skilling, the environment should be conducive in such a way that these people do get employed. Only then we will be able to justify the kind of investments that they're making, that the government or the private sector is making as far as skilling is concerned. You know, there's a great lack of income generation opportunities for them, lack of infrastructural support, lack of financial supports and social safety net. You know, it's very easily said that there's a lot of schemes, and I've been through some conferences or meetings with the government and private institutions and financial institutions at large, and I've seen people coming out with great PowerPoints and you know, coming out and giving a scope of the engagements, financial support engagements that they have for the marginalized communities. But when you go and when you see the financial records once they declare their annual records, you will see that the marginalized communities, because of a lot of difficulties, maybe zero collateral to pledge, or credibility in the society, or aloofness in the society, actually land up losing majority of the financial support system. They do not actually get a chance to get engaged. I'm not saying everyone, but a majority of these financial institutions actually do not go one step forward in order to extend the hand of support to get all the hands on the deck along with themselves. So, you know, this understanding of providing a social safety net and financial support has to go beyond the levels of just you know, sloganeering, and it has to go into serious policy implementation level. Because of the climate, because of the marginalized communities being more prevalent in the rural areas and being dependent on a lot of agri support, the climatic conditions over the last few years have played havoc. You know, it gets the farmers into a debt trap. The financial support is not given at par with the commitments made. The middlemen come in between, the local peasantry that takes shape, and I think over a period of time, he's either drawn to the end of life or he's drawn to where he started from. We need to change this work. We need to work through this change as fast as possible. We cannot deny that, you know, this relates to our next point, which leads to a lot of migration to the bigger cities, and in fact, the human density increases in the cities, which creates a pressure within the city's ecosystem to function. There are geopolitical issues which I don't want to discuss because this is a politically neutral platform, and I don't want to politicize anything, like everything that's happening around the world today. And the population pressure. You know, this population pressure is not only with the increasing population, but it is also the disbalance in the population equilibrium. So if you look at between the rural, semi-urban, and the urban structure, you will see a great amount of disbalance that is striking on these three parapets. And I am sure that most of you will agree that unless and until, you know, you have this, if you want to have this population disbalance in order, then you got to look at the previous 5 points that we have discussed to be taken care of. Now we've lectured a lot on what is livelihood, how do we go about it, what do we understand by livelihood and everything. Now let's start with some action flowing through it. So we have talked enough. Now what do we do about it? How do you promote livelihood? The 5 key factors that we want to enunciate are infrastructure development, skill development trainings, Financial and technological support post the skill development training. You first empower somebody with the training and the knowledge that you want to give, and then you provide them with a financial net and a tech support in order for them to stand on their own feet or probably become an employer or a self-employed person at large. Creating employment and self-employment opportunities, building forward and backward linkages in the value chain system. You know, this is a very, very scientific term, building forward and backward linkages. In simplest terms, please look at your value chain management very seriously. We have a dedicated slide about this when we come to the end of it. Okay, now what are the approaches to livelihood intervention? So these are scientific terms. Spatial approach. So promoting livelihoods in a specific geographical area, region, or a sub-region, command area, or watershed. So, you know, these are just definitions. I wouldn't try to figure out a solution out of this, but I would still like you to go through it. I think this whole PowerPoint will be sent to you on request after its presentation, so you can actually go through it. I think it is the content team has really worked hard, and they've actually worked the definitions out. So I would like you to just read it through and come back to it if you have any questions on that. So promotion of livelihood, we'll start with skill development now. Well, we need to develop and empower human capital to ensure India's competitiveness. You cannot have technology unless and until you have the right pair of hands working behind that technology and a brain functioning in line with it. You need to get your human capital Retail will need about 1.6 crore skilled people, automobile 40 lakh, logistics 1 crore, textile, clothing industries 1.4 crore people. Just look at those figures. You know, I somehow had a little bit of doubt about the kind of push that the government was actually giving for skilling before I delved into the presentation. And once we started making this presentation, it became quite a bit clear to me as to why the chambers, the industry, the government are all focusing towards making as much of the youth genre skilled as fast as possible. And these figures actually tell you that we need to get people ready. We need all hands on the deck to utilize the boom in the economy once it happens, and once stability comes back into this economic system, we need to have these many people on the deck so that we can utilize and optimize the opportunity that comes our way. You know, it is estimated that only 2.3% of the workforce in India has undergone formal training. Just imagine that disparity. And look at these figures when you look at. It's 68% in UK, 75% in Germany, 52% in US, 80% in Japan, and 96% in South Korea. It tells you we are nowhere, to be very frank. We are absolutely nowhere right now. And I hope with the impetus that few institutions are showing, and with the industry and the chambers coming to play a positive role in it, we are able to turn this around. It will take time, it will take a lot of patience, it will take sustained efforts for us to go about it, but I hope that with the kind of impetus that we have woken up and we are aware of it, we are able to actually compete with all the developed nations of the world, and only then I think we'll have the right foundation to call ourselves progressively forward. You know, the target is to develop 500 million Indians in less than 10 years with the help of private sector and the National Skill Development Corporation. We are going about it, but I just hope that, you know, as we keep getting our youth skilled, we have to realize that the opportunities that this skilled people will require to work should also come hand in hand, because chances are that you get somebody skilled, and if the opportunities are not given to them to either start their own resource or to get into any industry at large, chances are within some period of time they will go back to where they started from. In fact, once they go back, the resistance to come back into the system of skill will be even more greater than what we are facing today. So let's see how corporate social responsibility and livelihood actually embeds itself together. So one of the things is the best way, as of what I understand, and when I go on to faculties to make people understand, I understand that the best way is to do by case studies. The best way is to do by certain examples. So how does CSR and livelihood work together? So for example, the Tata Group, HUL, SDFC, Axis Bank, there's some are involved in livelihood promotion activities. Now, specifically speaking of CII, the Chamber of Commerce are also engaged in livelihood promotion activities. I'll come to the details of it in that. So the major focus of CSR has been on health, education, and sanitation. To be very frank, and this is because I'm speaking with some kind of an authority in the subject, whatever limited capacity I have. Livelihood has not become the top priority. It is not the top priority. The narrow focus of corporate social responsibility is limited right now to health, education, sanitation. There are some industrial players who are actually looking at livelihood, but there's a far way to go to reach sorry, to see that livelihood becomes a top priority. There's a need to create employable skilled opportunities in labor-intensive industries, as we have discussed in our previous slide. In livelihood, your major focus is now on skill development for higher growth and sustainability. So we cannot now look at the other side of it. We have been talking about the industry coming at a time when the youth is getting skilled and the industry takes place. Imagine a situation where the industry comes now and there is no availability of skilled labor or skilled workforce. So what do you do? So it is not about who comes first. It is about a systematic, aligned, synchronous growth that we are looking at, where the skilling happens at a pace in which the industry accommodates that skill. So skill development, especially with SC and ST communities. What are the requirements? What are the challenges? What are the requirements? How do we go about it? So need for skill development higher among these backward communities as they are most vulnerable. Now we have discussed why they're vulnerable. We have discussed some data in the previous webinars about what is the disparity we are talking about, what kind of a data we are talking about. We have discussed it. Lack of financial support, education, technology, infrastructure, and social capital. A majority mostly engage in unsustainable and low productivity practices. High rate of unemployment. In fact, if I remember from the data that we last published, the average ratio back in 2012, the average ratio of unemployment was with the backward communities was about 72%. This is alarming enough to make us realize that our policies on skilling, our policies on social responsibility and affirmative action needs to be deeply focused into these communities, because if we can address their concerns, chances are we'll be able to reach the figure much faster than what we're targeting for. There's a lack of self-employment opportunities. Why? I have explained to you, because there are lack of social safety nets available. People from these communities actually do not get access to a lot of collateral. Without collateral, you and I both know how does the banks work, unless and until we are really influential. But it doesn't work that way. These people actually get left out from the mainstream system, and that is how you actually lose a lot of workforce or an employment opportunity, or even an employer's opportunity, if I may say, in the society at large. Now, some of the government interventions, I think we need to look at it very, very seriously. The National Skill Development Corporation, which was set up in 2009, is a PPP company with primary mandate to catalyzing skills. Now, the target is for 500 million skilled workforce in India. Some of the major skill development programs, you can see it on your screen. NRLM is the largest livelihood support by World Bank with a credit line of 1 billion. Skill India mission will definitely benefit about 94,000 SC/ST candidates. So we're looking at a great amount of workforce coming from the SC/ST communities by Skill India mission. The autonomous body registered under the Societies Act, rationalized skill development schemes. These are some of the institutions which you can actually look at. The last one is the Department of Training. So each department or the industry or the divisions of the industry have transferred from Labor Department to the Training and Apprentice divisions. basically to look at protocols, charters, policies being devised in such a way that you can actually take charge of certain number of people in a department and train them, skill them up for deliveries specific to that division. Okay, now let's look at the Stand Up India scheme. I literally don't mean stand up, but the Stand Up India scheme has been publicly sloganed enough, and everybody anybody who reads newspaper or is aware of the news, if I may call it, in the electronic media that it goes through, then you must be aware of the Stand Up India. But a few nitty-gritties about how does it relate to the backward communities. Rupees 500 crore has been allotted to promote entrepreneurship. At least 22.5 lakh entrepreneurs will be benefiting. All bank branches to provide support to at least 2 projects. Now, again, I would request, if there is any banker online, if there is any financial institution person today in the webinar or may see the webinar later on, please realize that you have been given a responsibility of providing support to these upcoming projects in Stand Up India. Please do deliver on the policies and don't take it as a carry forward. Rupees 10 lakh to 1 crore will be provided as loan to them for new ventures. The result of this will only be seen next year, and I'd be more interested in seeing what result actually, if the finance minister can come and show some results on celebrating, and it cannot be a more auspicious or a more apt year for us than this 2016, because I hope we can take a solemn pledge that whatever we are committing for the backward communities to come at par with the other communities at large is not only being spoken about, but is also adhered to at every implementation level across every state, district, taluka, block, mandal level that we can actually intrude into. The National Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe Hub in the MSME Ministry, I think a great initiative. Unless and until our MSME sector actually comes up, we cannot expect the corporations, because most of these MSMEs sector industries are feeders to the larger corporations, and if we somehow can able to concentrate and regulate the affirmative action policies in these MSME sector industries, I think the corporations will take it over at large. A large scope of partnerships with the industry associations such as CII and DICCI. The hub will provide professional support to scheduled caste and scheduled tribe entrepreneurs to fulfill obligations under the central government procurement policy, adopt global best practices, and leverage the Stand Up India initiative. It's better that actually if we can go back to our drawing boards after this webinar, and whatever way we can, if we can communicate this to the prospective beneficiaries of this scheme to come on board, I'm sure the hub will make it sure that by its expertise and hands on deck, it will be able to provide not only financial support, technological support, but also guide the beneficiaries of these communities towards adopting global best practices. Now, public procurement policy for the MSMEs, Order 2012. I will not go into the details of it, because anyway, I'm sure you'll get bored of it. I will forward this presentation to you if you request so, and if I may request to Mr. Subhash Sapru. The overall procurement of minimum 20% of the total annual purchase products, services from MSEs, out of 20% of the target annual procurement, from micro and small enterprises, enhancing participation of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in government procurement. There are certain industry players who have actually mandated, if I can state it correctly, that a certain percentile of their procurement has to come from MSMEs run by scheduled caste and scheduled tribe entrepreneurs. Special vendor development programs and buyer-seller meets to be conducted. Outreach programs shall be conducted. National Small Industries Corporation. National Small Industries Corporation shall open a special window for SCSTs under its single point registration scheme. Now, well, the budget 2016 propositions, which are indirect, and how it will affect. So 28.5 lakh hectares will be brought under the irrigation under Pradhan Mantri Sinchai Yojana. At least 5 lakh farm ponds and dug wells in rain-fed areas, and 10 lakh compost units for production of organic manure. Soil and health card scheme to 14 crore farm holdings by March 2017. The Yojana for which will bring about 5 lakh acres under organic farming over a period of 3 years. The government of India has launched a value chain based organic farming scheme, which is your basically organic value chain development in Northeast region. If you want to study the example, I think you can go and study the Sikkim example at large. The government is implementing the Unified Agriculture Marketing Scheme to reduce the burden on loan repayments on farmers. A provision of 15,000 crore has been made. I hope it is distributed in time. Government has approved the path-breaking Prime Minister Bima Yojana. The animal husbandry component 850 crore for the next few years. First, Pashudhan Sanjeevani, an animal wellness program. Animal health cards, which is a very good initiative because we cannot deny the fact that a great amount of rural livelihood actually depends on cattle and animals. An advanced breeding technology. Third, creation of e-Pashudhan Hart, an e-market portal for connecting breeders and farmers, and a national genomic center for indigenous breeds. Digital literacy mission scheme for rural India to cover around 6 crore, a sum of 2,000 crore to meet initial cost of providing this LPG connection. A new health protection scheme which will provide health cover to up to 1 lakh. Higher Education Financing Agency HEFA with an initial capital base of 1,000 crore, and under Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, 1,500 multi-skill training institutes will be set up across the country with 1,700 crore. You know, this is the last line. I want to emphasize that this is a good opportunity for the industry to partner. You know, it is not, the government has a responsibility, but we at the industrial level cannot absolve ourselves from the responsibility of meeting these requirements at our own cost. The best way is, if there is a mechanism that has been put in place, the best solution that can come through is if the industry can actually partner with the government, or industry can partner with its own partners in the industry and form a multi-level program so as to meet the skill requirement for 2040, and also to ensure that these skilled people do not have to search for an opportunity to enable their skill, but can be absorbed by the industry at large. The Government of India will pay the Employee Pension Scheme contribution. 100 model career centers to be operational by the end of 2016. Entrepreneurs will be able to operate buses on various routes subject to efficiency and safety norms. 100% FDI will be allowed for Foreign Investment Promotion Board for marketing of food products and produced in India. Now, benefits, specifically speaking of SC and ST. 2 crore taxpayers in the category who will get a relief of 3,000, whom liability of whom majority would be SC, ST communities. Increasing the limit of deduction in respect to the rent paid under 80 GG. A special patent regime with 10% rate of tax on income for the world of exploration of patents. Deduction of additional interest of 50,000 per annum for loans up to a certain amount, provided the value to the house and it should not exceed 50 lakhs. Krishi Kalyan cess of 0.15% on all taxable services to benefit farmers. Well, a lot of people debate on it, but you know, let's give it to them. This is the requirement of the hour. I hope the government also finds out other avenues for increasing resource availability for the farmers at large. The benefits is, with respect to SC/ST entrepreneurs, you know, the corporate tax from 30% to 25% over a period accompanied by rationalization. The benefit of Section 10AA to new SEZ units will be available. 100% deduction of profits for 3 out of 5 years for startups set up under April to March 2019. The big relief to large number of SSS with turnover of maximum of 2 crore, especially in the MSME category, as it frees them from the burden of maintaining detailed book of accounts and getting audit once. And I guess it will ease out the burden for specifically the SC/ST communities, which is a large player on the MSME platform. The sustained suitable changes in the customs and excise duty, 100% deduction for profits undertaken from housing projects or flats, equalization levy to tap tax on income accruing from foreign e-commerce companies from India. Skill India campaign. Well, one of the campaigns, let's look at it. Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the Skill India mission on 15 July 2015, aimed to become human resource capital of the world by providing 5 to 4 crore skilled professionals to work abroad, develop the ITIs like the IITs. Now, this is, I think, one mission which is very optimistic, but I think unless and until you have a great dynamic optimism in your thought process, it is virtually impossible to start the chart of progress. And I think the industry, if it agrees to a great extent with me on this, is that we have to play a very, very crucial role in order to make it sure that we are able to reach at least 70% of our target. Skill India mission target is to provide skill trainings to 4102 crore by 2022. Skill loans will be made available for 34 lakh youth. The financial institutions and industry will have to play a very proactive role in providing this kind of finance to the entrepreneurs. Scientific mapping of job market linked to Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. The country's first skill development university will be set up in Maharashtra. Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana completed 10 lakh enrollments under Skill India till February 2016. Okay. Now, how do we actually are thinking that I'm talking too much about them, but they have somehow always set up the benchmarking as far as affirmative action and mandating affirmative action and social responsible behavior within a complete functional value chain of a company is concerned. To better equip aspirants, youth of Nagaland, the state government, again the Tatas have got involved in the PPP mode. The ILFS Skill Development Corporation, in partnership with NSDC, aims to train 40 lakh people by 2022 through a network of 100 multi-skill institutes and single-skill schools. These are some of the examples. I'm not saying this is all about it, but these are some of the examples. Yeah, so CIA has been supporting the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Ministry of Labor, Employment, and Ministry of Rural Development. NSDC has urged the corporations to promote development through targeting 150 million people. CIA and skill development initiatives. Well, some of the things that we wanted to discuss about the chambers at large is the fact that it supports various ministries to promote skill development. It targets SC/ST communities to provide skill development trainings. It launched the India Skills Report in 2015, provided recommendations for the new skill policy. CII members are adopting and upgrading 390 ITIs and strengthening the system. CII has set up skill hubs in Chhindwara, Madhya Pradesh, Bhiwadi, Rajasthan, Odisha, and throughout Pan-India. CII is also working on various on-ground initiatives with PSUs like HPCL, IOCL, NSFDC, and others, basically to organize the job fairs across India. Alignment of affirmative action and CSR by India Inc. If you can just go through it, Reliance Industries, Tata Group, ONGC, Coca-Cola, they're running some of the campaigns in which they have made it sure that they're aligned to the CSR and the affirmative agenda. Amity, Bajaj Electricals, GlaxoSmithKline, Bhel, and Indian Airlines, they have gone on a specific mode of adopting villages. Specifically some programs like Atul Asha and Amit Asha programs for SC/ST boys and girls for providing education. Now, the basic concept of alignment of affirmative action, CSR, and skill development. So what, why, where, and how? You know what? If you just look at it, it says providing skill development trainings under the CSR and the SC/ST communities. Why? SC and ST communities most vulnerable, marginalized, and the poorest sections in India, where geographical areas with high percentage of SC/ST communities, and the high percentage definition can actually be brought about. You can understand if you go through our previous webinars. You can actually go through that data and figure out where these concentrations do happen and where they are in occurrence. How? Community-based intervention, skill development centers, EDP, which is your entrepreneurship development programs, ERCs, entrepreneurship resourcing centers, supporting government initiatives and partnering with them. Well, now something that we can suggest and we can take the way forward. The way forward can be elaborated by highlighting few CSR models by companies. HUL contributed about 42 crores in watershed development. Axis Bank Foundation work in Dang, Gujarat to enhance livelihood. Rashtriya Ispat Nigam Limited through Kaushal skill development program exclusively for the youth and the SCs of Visakhapatnam. And similar initiatives can be taken by corporations under their corporate social responsibility, targeting scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Well, this is a simple model that we can actually suggest, a tripartite model. If you just go through it in a simple terminology, it will be very difficult for me to explain the graph. But the ideation behind this policy is to just give you a format as to how simple it can be. So for example, you may be a corporation X with NX expenditure. It's just given hypothetically as 500 crore. The products can be handicrafts and food processing. You can be registered under the Companies Act. Operation sourcing from community members, processing of finished products, marketing, sharing of revenues, yearly dividends, remunerations, and it can all boil down through a simple entity management system into the SC and the ST communities. The benefits of such an initiative: it provides an opportunity to gain financial sustainability. The CSR grant now, which is the mandate under Section 135, will allow corporations to spend more money on livelihood issues, provided they are convinced about the fact that livelihood now has to be the top priority. The assets of entity belong to the community and cannot be sold off to private of gain. People who are local stakeholders in the area of benefit. Local community are the shareholders who ensure accountability, and the entity will be able to generate profits or a surplus that can be reinvested in the distributed for the community benefits. So that will be it. Nevertheless, I would like to thank Rahul for pushing in the content, and I must say that he has been majorly responsible for devising this content, and the simple and the design, the simplistic design that you saw in the presentation is by Rohit Srivastav, and I extend my complete sense of thanks to both of these guys who have done a phenomenal job in getting this webinar to you. I can now hand over the podium to open for questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer the questions, if any.
Thank you, Mr. Chakraborty. We do have a couple of questions. The first one is, how can we bring more organizations to join the CSR work?
Okay. How can we, if I got the question right, Mr. Sabro, is that how can we actually get more organizations to get involved in this CSR work? Is that right? Yeah.
That's
See,
right.
one of the things that I believe in my individual capacity and an institutional capacity is the fact that it has to come organically. In the West, we have a concentration of understanding and taking into account our workforce welfare or the community around which we operate. The issue with India is that we have become so financial chart centric that if we just deviate a bit and look at long-term sustainable financial returns, we actually won't be able to ignore the very environmental and the social and the economical parities on which we work. So for the industry players who are actually exemplifying through their work, they have to actually make it sure that the results that they obtain by adhering to social responsibility standards is not just limited by within their reports, but is communicated to the industry and the sector at large, so that others, by seeing a positive story, can also start thinking or putting the trolls back into their head of trying to imbibe this kind of a policy level mechanism.